As the trade war deepens, supply chains in China are being forced to shift to Southeast Asia, not back to North America, the survey found. And even if it wasn't for these tariffs affecting these companies, they still wouldn't want to bring their businesses back to the U.S. because if they did, they'd get taxed to death by the U.S. government, and also they've got a much cheaper labor force in Southeast Asia. It isn't unionized, and they don't expect the benefits that you expensive U.S. workers do. In short, the global supply chain is a huge, complicated process. Nonetheless, we can make some informed assumptions if the tariffs are actually working in accordance to Trump admin's revival narrative of the economy. Glancing at the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia's monthly state leading indicator maps, they project state-by-state economic conditions 6 months into the future based on key metrics like housing permits, initial unemployment benefit claims, delivery time for goods produced by manufacturers, and the spread between short and long-term interest rates, said the Washington Examiner. The first map is for September 2018, along with the August 2018 map for comparison. The August map shows most states west of the Mississippi River in forest green, indicating high-paced growth. However, 1 month later in September, a number of those states turned a paler shade of green, which showed slower economic growth. And from these two maps alone, you should be convinced that the U.S. economy isn't getting any better and isn't going to get any better. It's going to be a slow and then rapid decline until that economic collapse. Here's the map for August. Things are looking relatively stable. Just a short month later in September, and you can't say that this is an insignificant decline, and at such a fast rate at that. And a lot of these states that are seeing slower economic growth is where a lot of low-skilled Edomite workers are, which is why you're seeing a high rise in opioid and other drug addictions, as well as high suicide rates across all ages, not just the middle-aged and elderly. Across the map, the slowdown was seen in Iowa, Nebraska, North Dakota, and South Carolina. The first three laggards are heavy grain exporting states. South Carolina is a heavy exporter of manufactured goods. And U.S. farmers have been getting especially hit with pain by those U.S. Trade tariffs on China. Because soybean farmers aren't able to sell as many soybeans as they'd like to China, who's I think the largest purchaser of U.S. soybeans, but because of those exorbitant prices from the trade tariffs, China's looking to other countries to get their soybeans from, such as Brazil, and there's already a high suicide rate among U.S. farmers, so this is only going to exacerbate the issue. It's just a vicious circle. What can we infer? Maybe trade wars are starting to bite, and an economic blowback is shortly around the corner for the Trump administration, which it is, because even now you've got mainstream economic media pundits talking about how the U.S. is on the verge of another great recession, if not in 2019, then by 2020. Nothing but doom and gloom in the news, all through the will of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. I'm going to close it off with Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 3 through 4. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders or workers cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened. So point blank period, the grinders are ceasing because they are few, because there are really no more jobs out here. Jobs are getting automated or shipped out of the country, and these trade disputes are further incentivizing U.S. companies not to bring jobs back to the U.S. And recently I read an article saying that there's been a high delinquency rate of people not paying back their credit card debt, and economists say that that's a major indicator of slowing economic growth, as well as people leaving out of the labor force. Verse 4, and the doors shall be shut in the streets. And this is speaking of businesses closing up shops, such as GM laying off 14,000 workers, as well as closing down 7 facilities. When the sound of the grinding or again working is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. So again, there's going to be no Make America Great Again, we're on the verge of the collapse and nuclear destruction of America, which is known as Babylon the Great in the scriptures. And this should be uplifting to you, brothers, to keep pushing this word as hard as you can, because we're at the door of our salvation. So with that, I'm going to say a Baba Ball, Kwam Yasharala. Until next time, Shalom.